At dawn, when the forest was still breathing mist and the village fires had not yet cooled, they saw her again. She sat alone beneath the tall irako trees, far beyond the last footpath, eating slowly from a small wooden bowl. No mat. No company. No protection. Just her, the quiet, and the deep green shadow of the forest watching her chew in silence. People stopped walking when they heard. Mothers pulled children close. Elders lowered their voices. In this village, no one ate alone, especially not in the forest, a place known for spirits, old hunger, and things that listened. "She does it every day," someone whispered. "At the same hour. With the same calm face." They watched from a distance as she lifted food to her mouth without hurry, as if she were not afraid of being seen or followed. No one understood why she would choose isolation over warmth, danger over community. Some said it was punishment. Others said it was shame. A few said it was worse, that she was feeding something that could not be named. When she finished, she wiped her hands on her skirt, stood, and disappeared between the trees. And not a single grain of food was left behind. By the time the sun rose fully above the roofs of the village, the forest felt far away again, like a bad dream that dissolved in daylight. Morning here always began the same way. Smoke curled gently from clay stoves, carrying the smell of cassava and palm oil through the air. Roosters crowed from uneven fences. Children ran barefoot across the red earth, laughing, chasing one another between huts as their mothers called them back to wash their hands. The village woke as one body, breathing together, moving together, as it always had. Food was never just food here. It was presence. It was belonging. Large wooden bowls were placed in the center of courtyards, filled with steaming porridge, roasted yams, and thick soups that clung to the spoon. People gathered around them in circles, knees touching, shoulders brushing. Elders ate first, slowly and deliberately, telling old stories between mouthfuls. Younger ones waited, listening, learning. No one was ever turned away. Even strangers passing through were offered a place on the ground and a share of the meal. To eat alone was unthinkable. To eat in silence was a sorrow. To eat in the forest, people did not like to finish that thought. As the day stretched forward, work unfolded with the same quiet rhythm. Women pounded grain in wide mortars, their movements steady and practiced. Men repaired fishing nets, sharpened tools, argued softly about nothing important. Laughter rose and fell like birds lifting from the trees. Life continued, familiar and safe. And yet, beneath it all, a thin thread of unease remained. People glanced toward the path leading into the forest more often than usual. Conversations paused, then resumed. A name almost spoken was swallowed instead. The image of a lone figure eating among the trees clung to their thoughts like smoke to fabric. At midday, when the sun pressed heavily on the earth and shadows retreated beneath the huts, the village gathered again to eat. Children were called in from play. Water was poured. Hands were washed. The bowls were filled. Everyone took their place. Everyone, except one. There was an empty space at the edge of the circle, where someone could have sat. No one pointed it out. No one mentioned it. But more than one person noticed how the food seemed untouched on one side of the bowl, as if an invisible guest had chosen not to eat. An elder cleared his throat, beginning a story about seasons long past, about a year when the rains came too early and the crops survived anyway. People nodded, grateful for the sound of something normal. Something safe. Still, when a child asked, in a voice too loud and too honest, "Why doesn't she eat with us?" the air shifted. A mother hushed him quickly. Another adult laughed, a little too fast, and changed the subject. The elder continued his story without pause, though his eyes flicked, just once, toward the forest path. When the meal ended, the bowls were scraped clean and washed. The children returned to their games. The village settled back into its rhythm. But the question lingered, unanswered. And far beyond the last hut, beyond the place where laughter reached, the forest stood waiting, quiet, patient, and unchanged, knowing that before the day was done, she would return to it again. No one in the village could remember a time when she had not been there. She was not new, and she was not old. She did not arrive with a story, and she never offered one. She lived in a small mud house near the edge of the village, close enough to hear the morning songs, far enough to leave without being noticed. Her door was always swept clean. Her cooking pot was always washed. Her presence felt quiet, deliberate, as if she took care not to disturb the air around her. People spoke her name softly when they used it at all. She greeted everyone the same way, with a gentle nod, a small smile, eyes lowered in respect. She helped without being asked. When water needed carrying, she was already lifting the calabash. When a child fell and scraped a knee, she was the first to tear cloth for a bandage. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her voice never rose above calm. There was nothing harsh about her, nothing secretive in the way she moved. And that, perhaps, made her strangeness harder to understand. At mealtimes, she was always present and always absent. She helped prepare the food, grinding grain until her arms ached, stirring pots until the steam dampened her face. She served elders first, children next, guests before herself. She made sure every bowl was full, every portion fair. Only when everyone had begun to eat did she step away, wiping her hands on her skirt as if her work were finished. Someone once pulled her aside and asked, carefully, kindly, "Have you already eaten?" She smiled then. A soft, closed smile that did not reach her eyes. "Later," she said. No one pressed her after that. People began to notice other things. She carried her food wrapped in leaves, never in a bowl meant for sharing. She left at the same hour each day, when the sun stood high but not yet cruel. She walked the same narrow path toward the forest, never looking back, never quickening her step, never hesitating at the trees. Children watched her go with curiosity. Adults watched with worry. Sometimes, someone would call after her. Sometimes they would offer to walk with her, just to the edge. She always refused with the same gentle shake of her head. "It is better this way," she would say. Nothing more. At night, her hut was dark early. She did not join the late conversations around the fire. She did not sing when others sang. She did not dance when the drums called. Still, she was never unkind. Never distant in spirit. Only separate. Rumors tried to attach themselves to her, but they slid away without sticking. There was no scandal in her past. No visible wound. No anger. No grief she showed openly. If she carried pain, it stayed folded neatly inside her, unseen. One evening, an elder watched her leave with her small bundle of food and spoke aloud what many had been thinking. "She walks like someone keeping a promise." The words settled heavily among those who heard them. A promise to whom? And for what price? No one knew. But as she disappeared once more into the line of trees, the sense grew stronger that her silence was not emptiness, and that whatever bound her to the forest was older, deeper, and far more serious than anyone had dared to imagine. At first, the village told itself it was nothing. People had their habits. People had their reasons. Not every silence was a secret. Not every path led somewhere dangerous. For a time, that was enough to quiet the unease. But patterns, once seen, refused to be unseen. She left at the same hour every day, when the sun balanced between mercy and heat. Not earlier. Not later. If clouds gathered, she waited. If visitors arrived, she still went. No celebration, no illness, no sudden event ever changed the moment she stepped onto the narrow path that cut toward the forest. Children began to count it like a game. "She's going now," one would whisper, watching her adjust the leaves around her food. "She always goes now," another replied, as if stating a rule of the world. Adults noticed too. They noticed how she never took more food than anyone else, yet never returned with leftovers. They noticed how the forest birds fell quiet when she entered the trees, not in alarm, but in pause, like listeners holding their breath. They noticed how dogs refused to follow her, stopping short at the edge of the path, tails low, eyes fixed. Whispers followed. Some said she was cursed and could not eat among others without spreading it. Some said she had made an offering long ago and was still paying the debt. Others leaned closer and spoke of spirits who demanded privacy, who punished those who watched too closely. Still, no one confronted her directly. Until the day the rain came without warning. The sky darkened suddenly, heavy and bruised, the kind of storm that broke tools and flooded homes. People rushed to pull clothes from lines and cover cooking fires. Thunder cracked close enough to shake the ground. And yet, when the hour arrived, She still wrapped her food in leaves. An elder caught her arm gently. "Wait," he said. "The forest is not safe today." She looked up at the sky, then back at him. Her face was calm. Not brave. Not stubborn. Just resolved. "I won't be long," she said. Rain began to fall as she walked away, soaking her skirt, darkening the path. Someone swore they saw her pause beneath the first trees and press her palm against the trunk of an old iroko, as if greeting it. As if asking permission. That night, the storm passed without damage. No roof fell. No field flooded. People noticed, but said little. From then on, small things began to feel connected. When sickness moved through a nearby village, it stopped short of theirs. When crops in neighboring lands failed, theirs bent but did not break. When children wandered too far toward the forest, they always turned back unharmed, claiming they felt watched, not with threat, but with warning. And always, she continued. One evening, a young man followed her at a distance, keeping his steps light, heart pounding louder than his feet. He watched her reach the familiar clearing deep among the trees. He watched her sit, alone, back straight, movements deliberate. Then he saw something that made him freeze. Before she ate, she divided the food carefully into portions and placed some directly onto the earth. Not thrown. Not spilled. Set down gently, like a gift. The forest did not move. The forest did not speak. But the air changed. The young man turned and ran before he could see more. By morning, everyone knew someone had followed her. And for the first time, the village understood that whatever she was doing in the forest was not only strange. It was intentional. After that night, nothing about her presence felt accidental anymore. The village tried to return to its routines, but attention clung to her like a shadow. People watched the way she moved, the way she measured her steps, the way she prepared her food with even greater care than before. Every action seemed precise now, weighted with meaning no one could fully grasp. She began to carry less food. It was subtle at first. A slightly smaller bundle of leaves. Portions that looked modest compared to what she once took. No one said anything, but people noticed how she grew thinner, how her collarbones became more visible beneath her skin. Still, her hands never shook. Still, her face remained calm. And the forest began to respond. On days when she left, the air near the trees cooled, even under harsh sun. Leaves rustled without wind. Once, a group of women swore they heard humming, low and deep, rising from the forest path long after she had disappeared inside. It did not sound human. It did not sound angry. It sounded old. Animals behaved strangely too. Birds gathered in larger numbers near the forest edge, then fell silent all at once when she passed. Antelope were seen standing unnaturally still in the distance, heads raised, watching the same clearing where she always went. Hunters returned with empty hands, but no sense of danger, only confusion. Fear took root where curiosity once lived. Some villagers argued that she was inviting something closer, something that should remain deep in the forest. Others said she was the only reason it had not already come. Voices rose. Accusations followed. Compassion began to thin. "She is feeding the forest," one man said bitterly. "She is feeding something inside it," another corrected. When the chief called a meeting, she stood apart from the circle, listening without interruption. Words like risk, safety, and tradition were thrown into the air. No one looked directly at her when they spoke. Finally, she was asked to explain herself. For a long moment, she said nothing. The fire crackled between them. Faces waited, tense, expectant. "I eat where I must," she said at last. That was all. Anger flared. It was not enough. It was never enough. Someone demanded to know what would happen if she stopped. Someone else asked who had given her permission. A third voice, shaking, asked what exactly she was feeding. Her eyes lifted then, just briefly. "If I stop," she said quietly, "you will know." The meeting ended without decision, but with dread. That night, the drums stayed silent. No songs rose. The forest pressed closer, darker than usual, its edge thick with shadow. Children slept poorly. Dogs whined in their sleep. And just before dawn, the ground trembled. Not an earthquake, something slower. Heavier. as if something massive had shifted its weight deep beneath the roots. Trees groaned. Dust fell from rafters. People woke in fear, clutching one another. At first light, they saw the marks. Deep impressions in the soil near the forest edge. Not quite footprints. Not quite scars. The earth looked pressed down by something that did not walk as humans walked. And in the center of the village, near her hut, they found her cooking pot. Empty. She stood nearby, pale but steady, tying the familiar leaves around a portion of food, smaller than ever before. When she turned toward the forest, no one tried to stop her. Because now, they understood something was no longer waiting patiently. It was hungry. By midday, the village no longer felt like itself. People moved in tight clusters, voices low, eyes constantly drawn toward the forest edge. The ground still held the memory of the morning's tremor, faint but undeniable. Children were kept close. Tools were left unused. Even the elders, whose words usually steadied the air, spoke carefully now, as if sound itself might travel too far. Fear had changed shape. It was no longer about her strangeness. It was about consequence. Some said the signs were proof that she had gone too far, that whatever lived beneath the forest had grown bold because it had been fed. Others argued just as fiercely that the signs meant the opposite, that something had been held back for years and was now testing its boundaries. She did not join the arguments. She continued her work in silence, mending a torn basket, sweeping her doorway, moving through the village as gently as ever. But there was something different now. A tightness in her shoulders. A careful slowness, as if she were conserving strength. The chief called for another gathering before the sun reached its highest point. This time, the circle was tense. Spears rested closer to hands. Faces were set with resolve born from fear. The forest loomed behind them, dark even in daylight. "You will not go today," the chief said, his voice firm but not cruel. "Not until we understand what is happening." She looked at him for a long moment. Around them, the village held its breath. "If I do not go," she said, "you should send the children away." A murmur rippled through the circle. "Why?" someone demanded. She lowered her gaze. "Because it will be loud." That was when compassion finally broke. A man stepped forward, grief sharp in his voice. "My brother's village was swallowed by the forest years ago. We will not let that happen here." Others nodded. Fear hardened into decision. They told her she would stay. They told her the forest was no longer welcome. They told her that whatever bargain she had made, it ended now. She did not fight them. When the hour came and passed, she remained seated by her hut, hands folded in her lap. The sun climbed higher than it ever had when she stayed behind. The forest stood unnaturally still, as if listening for something that did not come. Then the sound began. A low vibration rolled through the earth, deeper than thunder. The ground pulsed once. Twice. Birds burst from the trees in a sudden black wave. The air thickened, heavy and wet, pressing against chests. Someone screamed. From within the forest came the crack of splitting wood. Trees bent, not breaking, but bowing away from something moving beneath them. Roots lifted. Soil churned. The village panicked. People grabbed children, ran for higher ground, prayed aloud to any spirit that would listen. Spears felt useless now. Walls felt thin. Through it all, she stood. Her face had lost its calm, replaced by something raw and human, pain, fear, and urgency woven together. She turned to the chief. "It is coming because it thinks I have been taken," she said. "It does not understand cages." The chief's voice shook. "What is it?" She closed her eyes. "A watcher," she said. "And a protector. But it does not know the difference anymore." The forest roared, not with sound, but with movement. The earth at its edge began to split. She stepped forward then, toward the trees, ignoring the hands that reached to stop her. "If I reach it first," she said, "it will listen." "And if you don't," someone cried. She did not answer. As she crossed the boundary where village ended and forest began, the ground shuddered violently, opening a deep crack that stopped just short of her feet. For the first time, the village realized the truth they had avoided. Whatever she had been doing all these years, it was the only thing keeping them safe. And now, It might already be too late. She did not run. While the village scattered in panic, she walked toward the forest with measured steps, each one heavy with consequence. The earth trembled again, closer now, stronger. Dust rose in choking clouds. Cracks snaked across the ground like living things, stopping just short of where she stood, as if the land itself hesitated to harm her. The forest opened. Not with light, but with depth. Trees leaned outward, roots shifting aside to reveal a dark hollow beneath the earth, a place older than paths, older than memory. From within it came a presence so vast it pressed against the air, bending sound, bending breath. People fell silent. Some dropped to their knees without knowing why. She stopped at the edge of the hollow and knelt, placing the small bundle of food on the ground before her. Her hands trembled now. She did not hide it. She pressed her forehead to the earth, a gesture of humility older than language. "I am here," she said. The ground responded with a low, resonant pulse, like a heartbeat too large for one body. Leaves spiraled downward, caught in an invisible current. The forest seemed to inhale. From the darkness, something shifted. It did not emerge fully. It did not need to. The sense of it alone was enough, a watcher bound to the land, formed of root, soil, and ancient hunger. Not evil. Not kind. Purpose without mercy. It had been set there long ago, when the forest was wilder, when villages survived only because something else stood guard. She spoke again, voice shaking but steady. "I have not broken the promise." The presence surged, anger rippling through the ground. She reached into the leaves and lifted the last portion of food, smaller than ever before. Her fingers tightened around it. "I have given what I could," she said. "Even when it hurt. Even when there was less for me." Memories flooded her mind then, unbidden. The night years ago when the forest first moved. When elders long dead now had begged the land for protection. When the Watcher had answered, not freely, not gently, but with a demand. It would protect the village from famine, from sickness, from those who would destroy it. But it would be fed. Not with blood. Not with flesh. With sacrifice. With hunger taken willingly, day after day, by one who would eat apart so others could eat together. She had been young when she stepped forward. Not chosen. Choosing. Her voice broke. "I am tired." The ground shuddered violently. The Watcher did not understand fatigue. It understood balance. The village watched as she placed the food on the earth, then something else, something they had never seen before. A woven cord from around her waist, thin and worn. She laid it beside the food. "My strength is fading," she said. "I can no longer give what I once did." Silence followed. Then, slowly, the trembling eased. The earth settled. Roots lowered. The pressure in the air softened, like a clenched fist opening. The Watcher withdrew, not satisfied, but listening. She sagged forward, catching herself on her hands. Villagers began to move toward her, but she raised one palm, stopping them. "Not yet," she whispered. "It is deciding." The forest stilled completely. And in that stillness, the village finally understood. The question was no longer why she ate alone. It was how long she had been carrying their safety on her empty stomach, and whether the forest would accept that her sacrifice was reaching its end. The forest released its breath slowly, like something ancient waking from a long, uneasy sleep. The ground stopped trembling. The in the earth sealed itself, soil folding back into place as if guided by unseen hands. Leaves that had been suspended in the air drifted down gently, settling where they fell. Birds returned, one by one, cautious at first, then singing, softly, reverently. She remained kneeling at the forest's edge, shoulders bowed, her breathing shallow. The woven cord lay between her hands, darkened by years of wear. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the presence shifted, not forward, not back, but inward. A deep understanding passed through the air, felt rather than heard. The Watcher remembered. It remembered the first promise, spoken when the village was young and weak. It remembered storms that would have destroyed the fields, sickness that would have emptied the huts, strangers who came with fire in their eyes and left confused, turned away by paths that suddenly closed. All of it had been held in balance by one constant offering. Her hunger. Not the hunger of the mouth alone, but the deeper hunger of choosing less so others could have more. Of sitting apart so the village could sit together. Of carrying the weight quietly, without praise, without witness. She lifted her head then, eyes wet but steady. "I have done what I promised," she said. "But I cannot be the only one any more." The forest did not resist. Instead, something changed. The pressure that had always pressed against her chest, felt only by her, endured only by her, eased. The constant pull toward the forest, the unspoken demand that ruled her days, loosened like a knot finally undone. A low sound rolled through the trees, not anger, not threat, but acknowledgment. The watcher withdrew fully this time, sinking deep beneath the roots where it would sleep again, not gone, but quiet. Bound now not to a single body, but to the memory of a sacrifice freely given. She collapsed forward, strength finally leaving her. Hands caught her before she hit the ground. For the first time, the village touched her without fear. They carried her back across the boundary she had crossed alone for so many years. The forest did not follow. It did not reach for her. It let her go. That night, the elders gathered and listened as she spoke, not in riddles, not in fragments, but plainly at last. She told them of the watcher, of the promise, of the choice she had made when no one else could bear it. She told them how the forest had never asked for blood, only balance. How her solitude had been the price of their safety. There was no sound when she finished. No one spoke. Some wept openly. Others bowed their heads, crushed by the weight of years they had lived freely, never knowing the cost. They understood now. She had not eaten alone because she was cursed. She had not eaten alone because she was ashamed. She had eaten alone so that no one else ever would. At dawn, the village prepared a meal larger than any before it. Bowls were filled. Mats were laid. Everyone gathered. And for the first time since anyone could remember, she sat among them. When she lifted food to her mouth, the forest did not stir. The watcher slept. The balance held. And the meaning of every strange, silent act was finally, devastatingly clear. The morning sun spilled across the village like warm gold, washing the red earth, clay huts, and tall grasses in a light that felt different somehow, softer, safer, yet profound. People moved slowly, as if stepping carefully through a new understanding of the world. The events of the forest, the trembling ground, and the unseen watcher pressed heavily on their minds, but a quiet awe had replaced fear. She sat among them for the first time, her small frame curved over a simple wooden bowl. Children hesitated at first, unsure if they could approach, then gathered near, drawn by her calm presence. Adults watched from the edges, their eyes wide, hearts heavy with realization. Every movement she made now was unburdened, but still deliberate, like someone who had carried invisible weight for years and was finally letting it go. When the first spoonful of food reached her lips, the village held its collective breath. This was not just a meal. It was the culmination of decades of sacrifice, the fulfillment of a promise that had kept them safe when they did not even know the danger. They realized she had lived among them in silence, smiling, helping, and nurturing, while the forest's shadow loomed over her alone. Every day she had eaten apart, she had been defending them, shielding them from hunger, sickness, and calamity. The elders spoke quietly among themselves, then turned to address the village. "All these years," one said, "we have lived thinking our safety was simple. That life's balance was chance. But it was her courage, her sacrifice. Every day she chose the forest over herself so that we might live together in peace." Tears flowed freely, unashamed. Villagers reached toward her, offering hands, food, and words of gratitude. She accepted nothing at first, only looking down, cheeks flushed, eyes glimmering with the relief of release. Slowly, one child placed a small bowl beside her, another a handful of fruit. And then, as if permission had been granted, the entire village gathered, forming a circle around her. For the first time in decades, the forest felt distant. The watcher had retreated, and though its presence would always linger beneath the roots and shadows, its demands were over. The balance had shifted. The sacrifice had ended. And yet, the lesson remained: true protection, true love, often comes in ways unseen and uncelebrated. Hours passed. Meals were shared. Laughter returned, soft and cautious at first, then stronger. Children ran barefoot once again, chasing one another through the village paths. The elders began their stories anew, this time including her deeds, though carefully, for the truth was almost too vast to speak aloud. She listened, occasionally smiling, but mostly quiet, letting the weight of acknowledgment settle over her. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold, she rose and walked to the edge of the forest. The villagers followed her gaze silently. The trees swayed gently, as if bowing to her, honoring the courage that had bridged the human world and the unknown. She touched the earth once, lightly, whispering a word that none could hear. The forest exhaled. The watcher stirred briefly, then sank back into the roots, still and waiting. When she returned to the village, she carried no bundle, no food wrapped in leaves. She carried only herself, free at last from the solitary duty that had defined her existence. The moral settled over the village like a soft wind. True acts of love and protection often go unseen. True courage is not in glory, but in quiet, relentless devotion. Sometimes, one person must bear the weight of the world so that others may live, laugh, and eat together in safety. And that night, as firelight danced across walls and children fell asleep in the comfort of family and friends, she finally sat in the circle without distance, without fear, without hunger. The forest watched, silent and respectful. The village slept, whole and unafraid. Her story would be told for generations, not as a tale of fear or strangeness, but as a legend of selfless love, courage, and sacrifice. And every time someone walked to the forest's edge, they would remember. Sometimes the quietest acts carry the heaviest weight, and the deepest courage is shown not in power, but in giving one's life for the safety of others. In that moment, the village understood what had always been true. She had eaten alone, not out of shame, not out of fear, but out of love. And love, in its purest form, had kept them alive. The forest exhaled. The village slept. And for the first time, everyone was at peace.